Welcome into the Awesemo MMA Live Before Lock shows. We're here to get you ready for today's UFC Vegas number 46. Got a couple hours before we do hit lock. As the first fight today is at 5 p.m. Eastern Time, of course, live from the UFC Apex. You can watch this entire card on ESPN Plus. We'll be here for the next hour, breaking this one down for you, answering any question you have here on today's slate. Of course, as always, appreciate everyone tuning in here on a Saturday afternoon to check out Live Before Lock. Of course, as always, I am joined by the fighter Pete Rogers Jr. Pete, good afternoon, brother. How you doing, man?
What's going on? What's up, people? We're here. We have some fights finally, so I can't wait. I know everybody's jonesing for it. We're all excited. Obviously, short slate. Got to be careful. Have to navigate through it a little bit differently than we would normally, but we spoke on that on Thursday, so I'm excited to touch on it again and hear your thoughts on some of these matchups.
Of course, we do have 10 fights here as Brito is set to go, as it was his corner who had the COVID test issues waiting yesterday. Of course, when it comes to the weigh-ins, really no takeaways from me. Everyone made weight. I know a lot of people in our Discord chat were like, why are these heavyweights waiting for the last minute? The reason they do that is because they know you got to do a stare down. They know the stare downs are going to be at 1 o'clock East Coast time. So they're going to roll in less than 30 minutes before that is, because they're heavyweights. They're not really actually, Jake Collar's cutting weight. Still amazing. That guy fought at 185 pounds at one point.
Yeah. Everybody, we all get older, right? We all start to pack on pounds. You start to, bulk up a little bit and just kind of, I don't know. It's happened to me over the years, and especially with the COVID years, it happens, man. But Jake Collier really ballooned, and I actually really like him because I think that he brings like a lighter weight class style to the heavyweight division, which is pretty reminiscent to some of my fighters that I train, is where these guys that used to wrestle under 200 pounds, they're a little bit more agile than most heavyweights. And, they have some natural power. They got some weight to them, but they're able to stay on the outside and kind of out volume their opposition. So all in all, I'm just excited.
Of course, we are sponsored by PrizePicks. We'll talk about PrizePicks later on in the show. Of course, we gave you some PrizePicks plays on Thursday during the strategy show. One of those lines has changed a little bit, but I'll let you know whether our thought process changed on that or not. Of course, if you want to check out some of the free premium data and tools over Awesemo.com today, MMA fighter rankings is free up on the site. Also, NHL ownership projections, NBA player projections. Of course, we got you covered here all day long. Get you ready for all of these sports action. Of course, we got a ton of NFL programming for you today to get ready for all this weekend's NFL playoff action. Of course, also we got the NBA shows as well. But Pete, where I wanted to start off with this show, and by the way, be sure to smash that like button here. And of course, you got to subscribe also right here on YouTube. You know you got to do it. We got a ton of great program for you each and every day. So on Thursday, when we did the strategy show, we didn't have FanDuel salary. So I kind of wanted to start there this week in terms of the salaries for this card. Of course, obviously the DraftKings and FanDuel salaries are different because DraftKings salaries came out early. So there is value plays for guys like TJ Brown, Brian Kelleher because of the opponent changes. But over on FanDuel, Pete, it's a completely different story where if you want Brian Kelleher, he is the most expensive fighter on the board at $23. TJ Brown, he is $21. My biggest thing when I was looking at the FanDuel salaries, I was like, man, who do I want to put in my MVP pool? I mean, there's certain guys obviously you're going to want to put in there, but maybe my most confident play at MVP today may be Brand Royval.
Yeah, so FanDuel is completely different. Obviously, they're patient with their salaries, which we're not able to hop on some incorrect lines or some incorrect salaries as often as we are for DraftKings. So you're not going to get some of these minus 300, minus 225 favorites like a Brian Kelleher or TJ Brown inappropriately priced. So Brian Kelleher at 23, TJ Brown at 21. I still like them just because I think that they are in good spots. They're facing two opponents on short notice. They had full camps. They both represent, I think, a difficult matchup for their opposition. You have Brian Kelleher, who is, a decent finisher, has a very strong guillotine and submission arsenal. Kevin Croom throughout his career has been susceptible to getting finished. I'm interested to expand upon that. TJ Brown, excellent wrestler. So I still think like when it comes to like no brainers, getting to one of Kelleher or TJ Brown is probably the way to go and navigate through this slate for FanDuel or DraftKings. But as far as like inappropriately priced fighters or FanDuel MVPs, I am a little bit bullish on Brandon Royval, and I am a little bit bullish on him this week. And I know that um, he has some flaws in his style where his recklessness throughout the years is, has led to a lot of success. But eventually you'll start to, have your opponents capitalize on your mistakes. Throwing spinning elbows, nice. But when you miss on spinning elbows or spinning back fists and you're exposing your back to your opponents, good, strong grapplers like a guy in Rogerio Bontorin, a guy in Alexandre Pantoja, a Brandon Moreno, they can really capitalize on situations like this. And like I have to tell you, he has a really bad habit of turning his back and giving up his back. Having to fight out of close submissions is not a great thing, especially at the UFC level. But I will say that I think Brandon Royval's length can pose a lot of problems for Rogerio Bontorin, who's more of like the muscle hamster in this type of situation where he's more compact, he's more explosive. But yeah, I'm with you, man. I like Brandon Royval. I think that a knee up the middle can rock and hurt Rogerio Bontorin. I think that a sneaky finish via KO TKO is probably the route that I think I will start to target for betting. But yeah, outside of that, like on FanDuel, there's nothing that significantly sticks out to me as like a must have for a FanDuel MVP.
I will say, as I look at the FanDuel salaries, the one fight that I'm going back and forth on this one. And it's the Jamie Pickett, Joseph Holmes fight. Like, I feel like if you are looking at getting into those under $14 plays, as much as I don't trust Jamie Pickett, I don't mind getting there.
I agree with you. I hate the fight. So it's like, when you kind of just look at that fight as how it is on paper and you don't really associate too much of tape with it because you are dealing with a guy coming off the Contender Series. He does have some promise. He does have some length for the division. So his stature is going to pose a lot of problems for a lot of people. Does he have true experience in dealing with adversity? No, he doesn't. He's faced soft competition. Jamie Pickett will clearly be the biggest win if he can pick it up and one of the toughest opponents, even though I don't think Jamie Pickett's all that great either. But Jamie Pickett has at least been in the UFC and he's been able to fight some notable names, and it hasn't gone his way, but that doesn't mean that Jamie Pickett can't nullify some of Joseph Holmes' strengths. And, I don't like what I see on tape from either one of these guys. Joseph Holmes, yeah, he has a brown belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So does Jamie Pickett. And I think Jamie Pickett's probably the stronger wrestler in a situation. It's just the coaching staff surrounding Joseph Holmes is kind of like what's slightly tugging me in that direction. I don't like getting away from a Glory MMA guy. Like we love James Krause. He can really patch some holes. Derek Minner's the perfect example because I think Derek Minner is one of the most volatile fighters out there. When you put a smart mind behind Derek Minner, you even saw him fight a little bit more methodically and a little bit more calculated, which resulted in a win. Now, does that really work for everybody? Look, it will work for Kevin Croom as well. So, you know what I mean? Like James Krause knows what he's doing. All in all, I view that fight as a wild card. That's probably the biggest wild card on the entire slate. So I don't have a problem going either way, to be honest.
Yeah, something I'll mention about TJ Brown in this situation is I think one of the reasons, and this is obviously more talking about from the DraftKings side of the equation than it is talking about the FanDuel side of the equation, because of pricing and also because of, how points you can accrue points over on DraftKings is the reason I want to get the TJ Brown is Charles Rosa is very comfortable trying to play jiu-jitsu off his back.
Yeah.
And this could lead to a lot of potential takedown attempts and successful takedowns by TJ Brown, but also give him the ability to rack up control time, rack up total strikes landed on the ground. That's why, when I look on the DraftKings side of the equation, I'd rather get to more TJ Brown potentially. His ceiling, I think, is going to be higher than a Brian Kelleher, even though I think the early finish is much more probable for Brian Kelleher than it is TJ Brown.
Yeah, I agree with you. Now, as far as who's the higher scorer, I think that's a debate. We don't know, right? Like, I think that I would agree with you saying that the finish likelihood, is definitely in the Brian Kelleher corner. And the upside, is possibly more for TJ Brown just based on the matchup, right? Charles Rosa taken down 6 times against Damon Jackson, twice against Justin James, who should have been wrestling all along and finally decided to, 4 times against Derek Minner. But throughout those fights, he is controlled off of his back. He will occasionally attempt a submission. On the regional scene, I'm telling you guys, Charles Rosa has been put in bad positions and then he's bailed himself out. Okay. He's thrown up Hail Mary submission attempts, arm bars. He has a sneaky jiu-jitsu arsenal, but I think a powerful top game wrestler and like TJ Brown can pose problems for him, but TJ Brown's not the most trustworthy guy either. And the reason is because in his losses, he's finished. He's made boneheaded decisions time and time again, where he's either hurt on the feet or due to exhaustion, he's put himself in bad positions and then ultimately gets submitted. So if Charles Rosa had a full camp, I actually think that this fight would be a lot closer. He could end up doing this, but outside of a Hail Mary submission, I'm favoring TJ Brown because I think just the tutelage of James Krause and everybody out in Arkansas as well. I think they're going to have, we got to stay heavy on top. We're going to avoid some of these tricky situations. And then if Charles Rosa gets back to his feet, there's takedown city right there. So TJ Brown, one of the chalkiest plays on the slate. Brian Kelleher, one of the chalkiest, plays on the slate. Making a group over on Awesemo.com using the Fantasy Cruncher tool, something that I'm doing today. I'm taking more of a sports betting approach today, but just because of the size of the slate, but I would recommend having at least one of these guys in your lineup. The chalkiest build will have both of them.
It's something to mention, and you brought up this point on Thursday with TJ Brown, the fact of does do some training with Bryce Mitchell there in Arkansas. Mm-hmm. Of course, Bryce Mitchell already fought Charles Rosa, so something to kind of think about there. Another thing I want to mention before we get into the question is the DraftKings captain contest. As I was looking at the salaries over there, obviously people are going to be looking at Giga, and obviously you got to look at Calvin Kattar in that spot as well. I mean, obviously there's a lot of questions with Calvin heading into this one. I talked about this on Thursday. To me, this is a fight that comes down to one word, and that's range. What range does this fight play out at? One of my concerns is the fact of Giga just waiting on Calvin and countering his strikes. It's something that we saw Max Holloway do a tremendous job of, where you would see that one, or maybe it was a combination that Calvin would throw in that fight, and then Max Holloway was just timing everything, and he was landing 4 and 5 punch combinations to counter that.
Yeah, so I'm interested to see how this fight goes. I obviously think that the longer the fight goes, I would imagine it starts to really tilt in Calvin Kattar's direction. We have seen Giga Chikadze. He somewhat gas out sometimes in 3-round fights. The stylistic matchup that would be his kryptonite would be against a very, very strong wrestler who has adequate striking. We have Calvin Kattar, who is an exceptional striker, predominantly a boxer, heavy on his front leg, which that front leg could end up getting chewed apart against an extremely talented kicker in Giga Chikadze. I do think in the punching exchanges, Calvin will have the edge there. He needs to really press Giga Chikadze back beyond that black line. And if you go back and you watch that Edson Barboza Giga Chikadze fight, whenever Barboza pressed him and put him beyond that black line on his back foot, it made Giga really question about throwing kicks in that time, and also more defensive minded. So I think Calvin Kattar needs to really close the gap early. I like both of them, and I do think that it's going to be a competitive fight. I don't think it's going to be a blowout for either one of these guys because they're both so talented. The reason I was recommending Calvin Kattar on DraftKings is just because of the price differential. Like the discrepancy with the salaries, I think, is a little bit too much. I think it's a closer fight. Like if they would have put this fight 8,200, 8,000, or 8,400, 70, something around that range, I think it would have made a little bit more sense. I understand that Giga is riding high off of with the biggest win of his career. And we had just saw Calvin Kattar at the lowest point, but that is against Max Holloway, who presents a different stylistic matchup than anybody else. So all in all, for Fantasy Cruncher, for everything, for all my lineups, I want to get to the main event just because I know it's a striker's delight. There's 5 rounds to work with, but I do see that there could be some situations where takedowns or knockdowns are accredited. So I want exposure in as much exposure. Salary is not a question this week, Jason. So
No.
Giga Chikadze is going to be one of the most popular guys. He's a 9,000 smash for a lot of people.
I don't know if he's not a smash play at all for me.
Okay.
I think a lot of that, the reason he is very obtainable to get to because of the value that we have. Now, I mean, look, when you look at this captain contest, I look at someone like a Bill Algeo at 9,600. I can see a potential of being able to rack up points, a way to get different. You talked about Dakota Bush on the strategy show. It's a clash of styles, grappler versus striker. You know, he's taking on the Team Alpha Male striking coach here in Slavoclaws, and Harry Bush versus Slavoclaws. One of the, I will die if Bruce Buffer says Harry Bush. I know it's never going to happen. Like, first off, we have Harry Bush, Raw Dog, and Slavoclaws all on this card.
It's the card of the nicknames, the strangest, most desperate nicknames out there, but they are pretty hilarious.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm interested in these underdogs, but my point on saying that Giga Chikadze is going to be popular is just because there's so much salary left over. And if people are just translating Vegas odds to salaries, he's going to look like a good play, especially when you're getting a lot of these other minus 200, 300 favorites at completely inappropriate prices.
Of course, I know, along with putting your MMA lineups together, I know you're putting together your NFL lineups for today. And we have got a great promo going on right now over Awesemo.com for all these showdown slates that we have going on right now. We got 6 showdown slates over to the next 3 days. And we got a promo where you can get our NFL Express Weekly Pass for only $1 when you use the promo code SUPERWILD at checkout. Once again, SUPERWILD at checkout. One word, all caps, where you can get the NFL Express Weekly Pass for only $1. So think about it. You do that today, you got the next 3 days. Also, we got 2 playoff games next Saturday as well. So this is an amazing promo. You got to take advantage of it. It does expire on Monday, January 17th, where you can get our NFL Express Weekly Pass for just $1. So you got to take advantage of that. Absolutely tremendous deal that we got going on here for Super Wild Card Weekend. Of course, we got 2 games today, 3 games tomorrow, and then, of course, the Monday night game as well. And I mentioned you use that promo today, then you got it for next Saturday as well, where you got 2 games next Saturday as well. So be sure to check out that. Super Wild is a promo code for the NFL Express Weekly Pass for only $1. You got to take advantage of that tremendous promo that we do have going on over there at Awesemo.com. But of course, we are here to answer your questions. Be sure to line those up, whether it's here on our YouTube chat, also in Discord. Best thing on Discord, just mention me so I make sure that I do see this. I mentioned over on Twitter, Hunter Man saying, "Let's go, Pete. Calvin by murder got plus 425 inside of distance, bro. That's sick. That's a great line there. Plus 425 inside the distance on Calvin."
Yeah. So, I mean, it's a tough matchup for both guys. I just know that Calvin has more well-rounded skills than Giga Chikadze does. It's a matter of implementing the correct game plan. And we know New England Cartel, Tyson Chartier, they all create specific game plans each camp. And I think, closing the gap, crashing forward a little bit, weighing on Giga Chikadze on the cage, just really zapping that energy a little bit, possibly implementing some takedowns. Calvin has landed some in the past, against Andre Feely he has. So the skills are there. I know he trains everything. And I think that could be obviously the path of least resistance. Going to be a lot easier said than done. But, it's definitely an inappropriate line. It's a total line based on recency bias. So, yeah, I'm all in all, I'm backing Calvin Kattar, but I can't wait to see it. It's a striker's delight, and it's going to be a good card.
All right, let's play a little true false based on a comment that Alex had over in the chat. Alex says, "Do we think there's even 3 knockouts tonight? I just can't see it."
I don't know. I think we'll have over 3 finishes, but 3 knockouts, probably not. Let me look. Let me see. That's a good question.
So, I mean, like I look at it, and the ones that would stick out to me potentially for a knockout, Pickett Holmes would be, that's one I would look at. You got to look at the heavyweights, Kelleher and Sherman. And I'm telling you what, I know a lot of people are looking at the main event. I have a feeling that main event's going 25 minutes.
If it does, then you like Kattar, I think, right? Like
Yeah.
I would think so. I mean, look what he's done. He's been tested against Max. Max couldn't put him away. He should have. I mean, that could have been stopped against Zabit. You know, Calvin's game, man. Like he's very, very tough. I think two interesting fights that are very, very sneaky. And if you create your groups correctly, this is another group I created that I wanted to get at least one of these guys, and that's Bill Algeo against Joanderson Brito, in addition to Dakota Bush against Vyacheslav Borshchev. Like one fighter from that fight is going to pop. Bush has tremendous takedown upside. Borshchev has tremendous, knockout upside. But I'll tell you what, his takedown defense is super suspect. That Algeo Brito fight, thank goodness we're going to have it, but that's going to be a violent affair.
By the way, Kenny checking in. He's looking for a little medical update. Pete, how's the arm doing, man?
Good. We're making progress. Just don't want to rush it, and hopefully have something lined up early spring. But just got to take it, one day at a time. Dang, Jason, we got 150 people in here. If you guys can hit that like button, get us up over 100, we appreciate you. Shoot your questions into chat. Let's go, baby.
Just saying, there might have been someone might have hit Pete up like literally just as he got injured to go, hey, man, you want to fight?
Stop. I know. Listen, this is how it is, right? Your phone is dead. Nobody's hitting you up. The best way to put it, right, is if you are single and nobody's hitting you up, the second you get a girlfriend, every girl in the world wants to take you on a date. It's pretty similar to, when you're trying to find a fight. Silence everywhere. All of a sudden you get hurt or something bad happens and everybody starts blowing up your line saying, hey, we're interested in putting you on our card. And it's like, yo, where were you guys at these past 6 to 9 months when nothing was going on?
Let's just say there might have been a text about 2 weeks ago. Hey, man, call me ASAP.
Yeah. It's a good thing, right? Like I love when I get texts like that. Oh boy, what's going on?
Yeah, unfortunately, a little bad timing there. Yes. Let's see here. I go down some questions here. Of course, you do have any questions, be sure to line those up. We'll get to those as we do go on. I'll mention about the co-main event because obviously this is a fight that you talked about a lot. And, look, I don't have a lot of trust in either one of these guys. Chase Sherman is his final fight on his UFC deal. He talked about this week. He understands that he is fighting for his job in this one. Look, I think this is going to go one or two ways. I think either Chase Sherman is going to win this fight early on, or we're going to see a 3-round decision by Jake Kelleher. And one of the things Kelleher talked about this week, the one of the reasons that he loves this matchup is that he knows that he's going up against a guy that isn't going to try to wrestle him.
Yeah, I listened to the media as well, and Jake sounds like he had a really hard camp. He said that he's never really pushed himself as hard as he did this camp. He threw up a lot, so he's really in tip-top shape, and you like to hear that, especially for the heavyweight division. And his volume's always been something special. Going up against a plotter and Chase Sherman, who definitely has some pop and good sting in his shots. Chase Sherman has been susceptible to getting hurt and knocked out. Same way that Jake Kelleher has, but I will tell you that I like the volume of Kelleher in the matchup. I just really think that it's kind of like a career resurgence for Kelleher. I don't mind if you want to get to the underdog in a heavyweight matchup because it's typically a volatile situation. This is a fight where I predict it will end up going beyond 2.5 rounds. But I am favoring Jake Kelleher in the matchup. If you want to look just on, Chase Sherman has good volume, but it's the movement of Kelleher that could really elevate the totals. So all in all, I can't wait for it. Not the typical co-main event, but I would much prefer that Brandon Royval, Rogerio Bontorin as the co-main event.
Joe, appreciate you in the super chat. He says Sherman by knockout. Kelleher is terrible versus power punchers. Miranda round 1 at 85. Young round 2 at 85. And Aspinall round 1 at heavyweight. Sherman hits hard and could shut the lights out on Kelleher.
I was looking at that earlier. I was looking at that earlier, and they both have this whole card is littered with liabilities. So like you have Kelleher, who doesn't take damage well in some of his previous fights in his earlier career. Same thing for Chase Sherman. But I liked the shots that Collier took in his previous bout. And I think Carlos Felipe hits extremely hard. And he took 94 significant strikes from Carlos Felipe, 80 significant strikes from Jean Vellante. You know, it's weird. Sometimes you take shots, you know, when you're not having to cut so much weight and you're in better shape. And I do feel like Jay Collier, maybe the weight cut in the past, it's a little tough to judge, but I still see why people want to get to Chase Sherman. He's a big guy, 6'4", 250. The traditional heavyweight, Jay Collier, 6'3", pushing the heavyweight limit now, but formerly a middleweight and light heavyweight. So I get it. But I'm back in Jay Collier.
I mean, look, and the reality is that, you know, Sherman understands that if he doesn't get the win here, his days in the UFC are over, and probably back to the bare knuckle boxing scene for him. Tony says, someone explain how everyone was on Kattar being Holloway, but has no chance now against Giga.
So it's a good point, right? Like it's a typical situation where hindsight's 2020, and you know, Kattar looked unstoppable, and you know, he has all the skills to honestly contend for the belt. He really does. His defensive skills against Max Holloway were not up to par, and Max Holloway's volume just shined through, and the experience gap too, right? A lot of people, including myself, thought that he would have moments of hurting and testing that chin in Max Holloway. He landed some shots, but it just wasn't enough. Now, a lot of people are off the hype train. You know, MMA is a very fickle sport, and they like fighters when they're winning, and it's hard to get behind somebody who's just coming off a historical loss of, you know, taking 400, 500 strikes or whatever he took in that fight. So I totally get it. But I think Kattar has a better shot than what the odds suggest. And the reason behind that is everything we already spoke of. And whenever you can find something where you don't agree with the line or you don't agree with the salary, that's when you compare it to ownership. You go to Awesemo.com, you check out the ownership, you say, you know, for example, Kattar, 20% or whatnot. You think the fight's more like a 60-40. That's when you adjust your ownership accordingly. And that's where you actually have some success.
And question we'll mention here, or a comment, Ron says, what has the Boston Cartel actually won? How many champs, foreign champs train there? Now, look, the New England Cartel is a extremely small team. When you talk about UFC, you got a top 5 guy at featherweight in Calvin Kattar. You have a top 5 guy at Rob Font at 135 pounds. It's a rarity in this sport, especially at the UFC level, where you just have a core group of guys that are constantly together. It's not the big team. And Pete, you've talked about this plenty of times, and I've talked to Calvin about this. I've talked to Rob about this. These guys put on like 500 miles a week on their car, going gym to gym to get all the different looks in the New England area.
Yeah, it's tough in New England. And the reason is you know, you're dealing with a bunch of small gyms. You don't have an American top team like down in Florida where it's warm. Everybody wants to be. You got X amount of people down in Florida and the surrounding areas. You got tons of money down there. In New England, it's a tighter knit group of fighters. And, you know, if you're not familiar with the New England cartel, they have good UFC fighters, but outside the UFC, they have a lot of, you know, guys that are moving up the ranks. And it's a strong management team. And the management team branches beyond just the UFC. You talk about guys in Bellator, you're talking about guys all throughout the Fight Pass and whatnot. So just because there's not too many notable names, I would trust a lot of these guys, you know, within New England cartel a little bit more than some of these small camps coming out of Brazil or whatnot. It's different. You're getting lots of looks, and you can bring in training partners, and I don't know. You can always sit there and, you know, put small camps under a microscope and nitpick and whatnot. But I'll tell you what, it is good. It's beneficial to have a smaller group, because once you're a part of a huge, humongous camp where it's like a Walmart, you're just another number in a body for the top 3 people in that gym.
Oh, no question about it. Mention another question that I saw over here. Matthew saying, what 3 fights do you guys think are going to be needed for DFS? Where do you want to start here? The volatile fight to me, and I think the reality is the winner is going to be optimal in this fight, is Pickett and Holmes.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
I would be rather shocked if that
Really?
fight goes to the distance.
Okay. Let's say it finishes but low volume. That'll have to depend on the rest of the slate. But
Correct.
say
Yeah.
second round or third round, then maybe it's not optimal.
I think it depends on, do we have takedowns? I mean, obviously, if there's takedowns, it's going to come from the Joe Holmes side of the equation. And also, this is a rarity. These are two middleweights with massive reaches. They're both 80-inch reach advantages. Just to give you an idea, John Jones, who everyone knows how ginormous his reach is 84 inches.
Yeah, these guys are big, man. These guys are big. So when it comes down to putting your finger on the correct fights, it's one of the Brian Kelleher or TJ Brown fight. So it's going to be one of those. You need one of these guys in your lineup. I'd be very, very shocked. I think it's the main event, honestly, even though it could not be the most high volume, that we have limited fights. And I just think that the likelihood of an early KO or a stretched out decision with takedowns and all that is possible. And then it comes down to the Brito, Algeo, Borshchev, Bush fight. And that's kind of how my lineup prioritization is going. Like, I'm really looking at those fights I mentioned and navigating through it and putting different combinations together and, being a little bit more bullish on some of the fighters that I think are going to walk away victorious.
Borshchev is a guy we haven't really talked much about. He's a striking coach at Team Alpha Male, a little bit of an older guy, 30 years old. Obviously, he wants to keep this fight on the feet, where I think Dakota Bush is going to want to take this matchup to the ground. Obviously, you talked about on Thursday with the strategy show of looking at Dakota Bush for GPPs with the takedown. But Borshchev is a very heavy-handed guy.
Very heavy-handed. And I can really see this one, ending up in the optimal lineup just because what Bush needs to do in order to become, victorious. He can land big shots on the feet and hurt Borshchev 100%. The likelihood of that is small, and there's a big gap in skill when it hits the mat. So Bush really needs to take Borshchev down, like everybody that Borshchev fights tries to do, has some success with. Everybody he trains with, like we need Bush to avoid striking with him as much as possible, make this ugly, test that, take down the fence. Borshchev was not winning that Contender Series fight. He was getting taken down. He was getting controlled in striking exchanges. He was doing okay. And then he landed that beautiful check hook. And, he's got dynamite in his hands. It's just, knockouts are very difficult to come by. It's not like, I think we somewhat overrate how often knockouts are going to happen. So I'm going to back the wrestler in this fight in Bush, but you tell me Borshchev goes out there and lands a knockout. The guy's got 350 striking matches. Of course, that's a possibility.
Ron mentions, it goes, the issue is Giga line is inflated, but Calvin is extremely overrated. Biggest win was against Ige. LOL, his boxing is so good. Max Holloway broke records on his face. Yeah, Calvin getting smoked. First off, I will highly disagree with you on Dan Ige being Calvin Kattar's best win. I would put Shane Burgos over Dan Ige. And I would put the performance, if his fight against Zabit was 5 rounds, which, by the way, the Zabit camp did not want a 5-round fight. Calvin was going to win a 5-round decision in Russia against Zabit.
Yeah.
I mean, look, the Barboza win is a solid win for Giga, no question about it. But Ron, I'm telling you, you are underestimating the fighting abilities of Calvin Kattar.
I've trained with Kattar. I've sparred Kattar. I'm telling you, Kattar's good. Everybody in New England knows Kattar's good. It's, it's recency bias. It's going to be a good fight. It comes down to who implements the correct game plan. And, Giga has squeaked out some wins against some lower competition, whereas Calvin has fought the tougher guys. Split decision over Jamal Emmers, split decision over Brandon Davis. Anybody that can get takedowns against Giga can bank rounds. And I think Calvin can bank rounds by doing so and contest on the feet when Giga gets tired.
And like I said earlier, to me, does this fight play out at kickboxing range, or does it play out boxing range? That's going to tell you how this fight is going to go. Of course, this is the Awesemo MMA live before lock shows. We're getting you ready for today's UFC Vegas number 46. Of course, takes place here in a couple hours in Las Vegas. We are sponsored by PrizePicks. You got to check out all the props they have over there. You got to use that promo code Awesemo. And also, we got a great deal going on with PrizePicks. Get 1 free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum when you sign up and make a deposit at PrizePicks. You'll receive an email within 24 to 48 hours after to redeem your free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum. You know, we talked about on Thursday on the strategy show, Pete, about the significant strikes. The Chikadze line has not changed, 70.5. I'm on the over on that one.
Same.
The Giga line has gone up. It was 58.5 on Thursday. It's now 63.5. I still like the over 63.5 for Giga.
I still do too. Obviously you feel a little bit more comfortable if it was at the 58, but I still think that's fair, you know?
And I do like the Giga over 15 minutes on Fight Time.
I'd probably stick to the significant strikes. I think it's a little tricky. Just, you don't know. I think an early finish would favor Giga, and as the fight gets stretched out, starts to really tilt in Kattar's direction. But that's tricky to me. We'll have to see.
Yeah, I definitely already put my significant strikes play in on Giga and Chikadze. Got that in on Thursday because, as I always say, you got to try to hit some of these lines here earlier in the week so you can get the best line out there. Of course, be sure to check out the PrizePicks, and of course, be sure to take advantage of that promo we got going on there. You see the top right hand of your screen as well. We appreciate PrizePicks for sponsoring here MMA Live Before Lock show. Next up, we says, do y'all agree with Brown Rosa odds? Brown lost his last fight, in my opinion. Rosa is 60% on Tapology. I mean, look, Rosa, I guess you can say he's a consistent guy in the UFC. Win, loss, win, loss, win, loss. But to me, it is very tough to trust Charles Rosa in this spot because it's just, you just look at his past couple of fights. And the fact is he just plays jiu-jitsu way too much off his back, stays in that position where I just think that TJ Brown can rack up rounds as long as he can stay out of submissions. And the coaching staff gives me a huge favor in this one. And also, I think it kind of stuck out to me is that Rosa was not down in South Florida. He flew in from Boston for this fight.
Ooh, a little weird. A little weird. I think if Rosa had a longer camp, this would be an extremely winnable fight. I still think it is a winnable fight for him, based on his Hail Mary nature against a guy who has mental lapses and is a little bit lackadaisical at times and gives up his neck or gives up submissions. I still like TJ Brown in the matchup. I think that whenever you have a line of TJ Brown at minus 225, minus 250 or wherever it sits at, I think it's a little much. I think like a minus 175, it would be a little bit more appropriate. But I think it's warranted given the full camp nature and just his heavy wrestling style. So still back in TJ Brown. You could do worse than a Charles Rosa Hail Mary, but it's not for me.
And one of the thing about this card, and there's been a couple of comments in the chat about this, is like, don't worry about leaving $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 on the table. It's going to be very easy, especially if you decide, hey, you want to go chalk on DraftKings, you want to put TJ Brown, you want to put Brian Kelleher in your lineup. I mean, literally at that point, you could put, and if you want to throw Calvin Kattar in there, you could do whatever you want.
Yeah, like I said, salary, just don't even worry about it. You got thousands and thousands left over. Don't feel flustered about it. Just everybody's going to be in the same boat. If you spend everything, you can already guarantee that your lineup's going to be duplicated. So get different, leave salary on the table. Stacking becomes less of a priority for me this week than if we had lost one more fight. I still think it's viable and possible, but given just how much salary is left over, you're able to get to anybody. A tricky way would be, finding the correct fight that goes the distance where both guys just have insane totals. In a fight like a Bill Algeo, Joe Anderson, Brito could honestly be one of them.
Yeah, I mean, Ahmad mentions how Kelleher and Brown are locks for him. The only I don't mind that thought process, but I'm just going to say that if you're playing in large field GPPs, just understanding you're probably going to have a lot of people are going to have that thought process. So to me, if you want to get different, you only use one of them.
Yeah, I that's what I did. I don't want to have everybody's duplicated lineup, so I didn't want to have every lineup with both of them. Getting to at least one, though, I think is going to be the path to success. Avoiding both of them is extremely bold because I don't know if both of their opponents will come away with the victory. And I also don't know how, at their salary, they don't really smash and become a part of the optimal. So it seems like a no-brainer. Just try not to overthink it. Have one of them in your lineups and get different elsewhere.
Pedro, I'd like to know your thoughts on Brito.
It's a great question, man. Brito, wild card coming in here, a little bit unknown. Throws caution to the wind, combinations similar to John Lineker, Davison Figueiredo. Excellent style against a guy who struggles against takedown artists. Bill Algeo has been susceptible to taken down and controlled on the mat. I think there's upside in Joe Anderson Brito. With all that being said, throughout the regional scene, whenever he's met with some resistance, he can get put in a bad position as well. He can get reversed, and a guy with skills everywhere. But Algeo is a phenomenal striker, but also a good Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioner. I think you could see a guy in Joe Anderson Brito be like, wow, at this level, I'm getting met with some adversity and possibly fatigue and break. But Bill Algeo is much more of it's an underdog that has piqued my interest, but it's a live betting situation where round 3 comes around. We might look at him round 2 even, where it's like, okay, we start to see that momentum change and, whereas, you let Joe Anderson Brito somewhat punch himself out and just expend all that early nervous UFC octagon jitters and then hopefully capitalize as the fight goes on. But that fight is going to be very, very violent, very violent.
Next up, we have Dan saying, you think the main event is stackable this week? I can see it going 5 rounds. I'm not opposed to stacking the main event. I mean, I think that if your thought process is going with stacking the main event, your thought to me, it's got to be, you think this fight's going 25 minutes and Giga's going to win a decision.
You're right. And you think that a Calvin Kattar is going to, have enough volume to get you 50, 60 points in a loss. So totally acceptable. That's going to be, I would say, a chalky stack, but given the nature of the slate, I don't hate it.
Yeah, I don't mind it as well, but if we were down the 9 fights, it would definitely be a part of the thought process. Royval or Kattar for a higher DraftKings score?
I say Royval. I really like Royval.
Yeah. I would probably go Royval as well there. But I mean, look, the takedowns could be the ultimate game changer for Calvin if he is able to get
I hope he
to the
does
ground.
I hope he does. I want him to get back in the win column.
Yeah. Why doesn't it worry y'all that Brahima only has submission wins and McGee hasn't been submitted in 30 fights?
Yeah, fair, right? Yeah, I mean, you have to put yourself in the mind of the matchmaker, right? You have this guy who's a prospect. You want to test him. You want to gradually progress him throughout the division. You're either going to pit him up against another crazy stud, or you're going to put him against an aging veteran who will test him in all areas. So this is the typical prospect against a veteran. Court McGee will have skills in all areas. He's a very difficult fighter to get rid of. Okay. He's damn near impossible to finish. You can get him in some bad positions, but his skills everywhere really just kind of shine through. He's able to get back to his feet. He's able to defend a large amount of takedowns. I do think that he's somewhat susceptible to getting rocked on the feet and getting hit with big shots nowadays. I don't think that his defensive skills are all what they used to be. He has strong wrestling skills as well. So Brahima being a little bit green as far as, fights going the distance, it worries me a little bit, but I'd also kind of find some confidence in the fact that he's coming from a talented gym where he's training hard against top level competition on a daily basis. So I think this is somewhat not necessarily a passing of the torch or whatnot, but I think that youth could end up winning him some 2 rounds. And if anything goes to show, like in the Max Griffin fight, when he was getting hit with a lot of shots, outside of his ear falling off, I don't think that he would have gotten finished in that fight. So I'm a little worried. And Court McGee is notorious for losing decisions or squeaking out close ones. I feel like this fight's going to go the distance.
Yeah. Next up, Ryan says Chikadze or Royval for a FanDuel GPP.
It's
I would
Royval.
go. It's a Royval for me. I mean, the thing about Chikadze is, I mean, obviously you love the volume that she presents, but I think in terms of, getting to triple digits for her is how is she going to get to that triple digit number?
Yeah, I mean, if FanDuel allowed takedowns defended, then I would probably say Chukagian, but we're beyond that scoring system, and it seems like Royval has tremendous upside, whereas Chukagian has a little bit more safety revolving around her of outpointing her opposition.
Of course, one of the things that me and Pete love to see after the fights are over are those winning screenshots. I want to see you get into the Awesemo Hall of Fame today. Of course, to get in that Awesemo Hall of Fame, the first thing you got to be doing is you got to rock that Awesemo avatar on your DFS profile. Of course, you got to place in the top 3 of a contest with over 5,000 contestants. Tweet those wins to at Awesemo HOF. You'll win a free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum. Only one free month can be awarded to a user per calendar year. And of course, we want to see you get into that Awesemo Hall of Fame. And looking at some of the people that went into the Hall of Fame already this week, Michael going in there, rocking in that contest, winning 4th place there in an NBA single entry contest, also taking down in an NBA 20 entry max, which of course 20 maxers, one of my core lineups I love to go with there. Also, congratulations to the prospect chase, taking down $20,000. Kudos to you over there. Jake over on FanDuel taking down a contest, winning $4,000. Also, Properly Rooted taking down a contest as well, getting his first win over there. So congratulations to everyone that has gone into the Awesemo Hall of Fame, and hopefully we can see you get you inducted into the Awesemo Hall of Fame next Thursday when we're back here for the strategy show for UFC 270. Well, of course, if you do have any questions, you can line those up in the chat right now. We'll try to get to all of them before we do get out of here. Of course, got a ton of great programming coming for you today here on Awesemo.com. Of course, following us at 2 o'clock Eastern time will be the NFL betting shows. The guys will talk about the betting odds for today's NFL slate. So if you do have any questions, be there. Tony say, watch Maia be optimal. To me, if I am Jennifer Maia, and this is a rematch, she was able to get a takedown in the 3rd round at their fight there, UFC 244. To me, if I'm Jennifer Maia and her team, it's about going that takedown route early as possible to try to make this a jiu-jitsu matchup.
She needs to. She really does need to. Now, let me tell you that in all of her UFC fights, she has not landed more than 1 takedown. So, 1 takedown against Valentina Shevchenko, 1 takedown against Caitlin Chukagian. You'd like to see a fighter land more. She's obviously attempted more, but she hasn't had the most success. It's not like she's attempting 7, 8 takedowns a fight. It's a couple, and within a couple attempts, you're talking about fighters. Like, if I know somebody's going to take me down and you're going to train your whole camp to defend takedowns, you have to be able to chain wrestle. And we haven't seen that from Jennifer Maia. She very well could be optimal, but I don't think it's a likely situation. You'd have to have a lot go wrong on the rest of the card in order for her to do so. But that would definitely be sneaky. A sneaky fighter that I think that nobody's talking about, and including myself, it's just a fight that I feel is going to have crazy, crazy skills and pace. Despite my love for Brandon Royval, Rogerio Bontorin does have powerful wrestling and power in his hands. And the inconsistencies around Brandon Royval is a little cause for concern, just a tiny bit, just because he gives his back a lot. That's the only thing I'm saying, is where he'll accept positions to hunt submissions. So I think Bontorin, as far as like a dart throw, you could do a lot worse. But Brandon Royval is one of the staples for a lot of my lineups.
You're talking like a guy coming from experience that has to do a lot of chain wrestling.
Yeah, bro. Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course. Listen, we were chain wrestling last night. We were doing a ton of different drills on the wall mats and all that. So we got the whole team working.
Yeah. I mean, what, people want to take you down? Is that what you're saying? You're saying people don't want to have a karate match with you? Is that what you're saying?
Not yet.
It's like we're trying to find that for you. Right. Jackie says TJ Brown MVP on FanDuel. I don't mind it.
I don't mind it either. I don't.
especially you think about how that fight could play out. I would say this: I like TJ more on DraftKings. Taking the salary out of it, just thinking about the scoring systems of where I can see TJ Brown racking up a lot of points.
I agree with you. It's a slight edge on DraftKings whenever you got a grappler, just a slight edge based on the new scoring. So, yeah, it's TJ Brown on either platform. Don't hate it.
Yeah. Ryan saying optimal MVP pick for FanDuel GPP today. I would tell you what, I don't have like one. If I was going to label anyone, it'd probably be Brand Royval. But like, as I look at, one of the things that I'm doing over on the FanDuel side of the equation is I'm looking at our ownership. That's the very first thing I'm looking at. What's our ownership projections in terms of the MVP? And I'm trying to get away from the chalk plays. And, I want to get away from the main event. I want to get away from a Brian Kelleher, even TJ Brown to an instance. So I'm looking at where else can I find that leverage at. It's a fight that's got volatility. Pickett and Holmes is one I'm looking at. The Brito Algeo fight is another fight that I'm looking at as well. And probably Borshchev and Dakota Bush is probably the other fight I think you have to really look at when you're looking to try to get a little different.
Yeah, for sure. Just minimizing mistakes for your lineups, right? You want to try to minimize mistakes as much as possible. And, or you want to embrace the volatility in hopes that you just hit correctly. Like I always say, comparing Vegas odds to salaries is extremely beneficial. Also, taking a look at our top fighters tool is beneficial. Comparing that to ownership, what's their likelihood of entering the optimal lineup in comparison to the ownership of what we think or their projected ownership or projected, likelihood of reaching the optimal. So you just take all this into consideration. I value fight tape and fight film more than anything. And, I think it has helped me a lot, but obviously some things you can't, predict occur in MMA. Slips, scrambles, injuries, poor judging. So you just have to put yourself in a winnable situation and hope for the best. But all in all, we're back. Can't wait.
Dylan says, "Hey Pete, do you have a favorite fighter in a parlay?"
I do. I have a bunch of different things. I'm going to go a little bit more. I really like just a two banger. It's very simple. It's the chalky one. It's just the TJ Brown, Brian Kelleher. But I'll start to do like some. I think Brian Kelleher via submission is very interesting, given the nature of Kevin Croom wanting to grapple a little bit more than he has shown in the past. Against Alex Caceres, he somewhat grappled into exhaustion, and he got a little sloppy and got out-controlled in moments of that. If he makes a mistake against Brian Kelleher in grappling situations, I think Kelleher can either snatch up that neck or this could end up going the distance. So Kelleher via submission or via decision are things that I'm kind of sprinkling.
Who's going to take down City?
I think Charles Rosa. I think Charles Rosa is going to go to Takedown City. He's going to be on his back a lot throughout. Outside of that, Vyacheslav Borshchev could get taken down, or should, if Dakota Bush has a brain. Do not stand with this guy. Grapple at all costs.
Yeah, no question about that. Of course, be sure to like Awesemo right here on YouTube. Subscribe to the channel. We got a ton of great shows for you each and every day. Of course, we got you loaded up here with NFL and NBA content today. Of course, myself and Pete, we're here every Thursday and Saturday, as long as my football schedule doesn't play into it on Saturday. So we'll see, how the NFL schedule plays out here after the opening weekend. Of course, we got that great promo going on over right now, Awesemo.com. Super wild. So be sure to take advantage of that as well. Of course, you got any last minute questions, be sure to line that up. Who is the fighter we're not talking about? And there's one name that, as I look down at all the fighters' names on this card, that jumped out to me, Pete.
Who?
Kevin Croom.
My buddy texted me about him too. And
I think he's the one fighter we really haven't really talked much about.
Yeah, my buddy texted me about him. I don't hate it. I just seen Kevin Croom a lot on the regional scene. He doesn't take damage all that well, yet he's a banger. And in addition to that, he gets a little reckless despite coming out of James Krause's camp. A dog is still a dog, and he has that dog in him, and he'll throw caution to the wind, put himself in a bad spot, and gas out at times. I know some people that have beaten Kevin Croom. I don't really think that they're all that great. I think Kelleher is just he has the full camp, man. He's going to be in better shape, and I think he's going to be able to win this fight. But you're right. Croom hits hard. Croom has skills. He upset Roosevelt Roberts when nobody thought that he really could. Roosevelt Roberts, a highly touted prospect at one time, and that really backfired. So I don't hate it, but I still say no.
The one number in that fight that sticks out to you, you look at the tape, and that number is 7. 7-inch reach advantage for Kevin Croom.
Yes, very, very true. Very true, right? Like, Kelleher needs to close the gap. But, like, when you're a hooker and you sit there and you throw winging shots, that reach doesn't really matter all that much because you're not using your length to your advantage. Whereas, like, say you're on the outside, just popping your jab or your cross and just staying long. I don't think that Croom really has that fundamental skill set. It's all about winging.
Of course, we're got about just a couple minutes here left in the show. I will be hanging out in our office hours channel on Discord from 2:30 to 3:30 East Coast time. So if you do have any other questions, I'll be in there. Of course, fights do not start till 5 o'clock Eastern time today. Of course, with all the changes that have happened this week, the fight card got moved back 1 hour. Main card does still start at 7 o'clock Eastern time. That'll be on ESPN and also on ESPN Plus. I will tell you this. I'm not playing a ton today. I'm playing a lot of, single entry type contests, multiplier contests. I do got some entries in the big GPP, but this is one of those fight cards that I think I'm going to wait up for really going with the mass entries come next week.
Yeah. So it's where you just got to pick your shots, right? Like, already know that probably a quarter of your lineups are going to be duplicated. So that takes away a lot of upside. This is more of a betting type of card for me. Small slate, pick your spots, have fun, mix in some parlays, mix in some winning methods. I can't wait. So next week, I already kind of looked ahead, and that's kind of not traditional for me. I looked ahead and I'm like, oh my God, that's such a good card. So I'm excited. I'm excited for this one. Hit us up on social media, on Twitter. Let us know what you think of the fights or how you're doing throughout it. And, good luck to everybody.
The prop bet that has stuck out to me all week on this card, Chikadze via decision -125.
I think I agree.
Chikadze trying to avoid becoming the first fighter in UFC history to win their first 10 UFC fights via decision. That is a stat you don't want to attribute to your name.
Imagine if we could, I don't know if it's possible. You would know more than I do, but imagine if you could bet on like the result of the entire card, like bet the finish amounts, bet how many decisions are going to be on this card. Like, that would be fun. Like, because we set these lines all the time to try to help us navigate who's going to be in the optimal lineup based on the likelihood of a finish. But it would be really cool to sit there and have total card lines.
Brahima via decision +225 is another one I like.
It's an interesting one because Court McGee, man, he's known for losing decisions. And I think that Brahima is capable of winning 2 rounds. And you don't have to worry too much about the 3rd round comeback finish of Court McGee because he's not, usually a finisher.
He under 2.5 rounds on Kelleher. Croom is another one that sticks out to me.
Yeah, that seems like a good one.
Yeah, I think I want to say I just had up here a second ago. What's that? It is the under 2.5 on them is -150.
I'm telling you, there is value to be had in regards to betting. So if you have sports betting legal in your area, I would recommend doing that in addition to playing DFS. I think you could have more success with sports betting today.
And that's one of the things that I always talk about is I'm always looking at those betting odds as just kind of see what's the betting public like, and how it's helped me develop my lineups for DFS here today. But that is going to do it for this edition of the Awesemo MMA Live for Lock show. Appreciate everyone tuning in here on a Saturday. Myself and Pete will be back Thursday, 1:00 Eastern time for the UFC 270 strategy show. We'll get you ready for Ngannou and Gan. Also, you've got the flyweight title fight, Moreno and Figueiredo. So that's going to do it for this edition of Awesemo MMA Live for Lock. We will talk to you on Thursday for the strategy show for UFC 270. Have a good day, everybody.